Hi, happy Thursday, and welcome to this week's Mining for More. My name is Jillian Fritzky, and I'm so glad that you're here. Please bear with me as I have a little bit of a cold. So let's jump in. If you came to church last Sunday or watched online, you will remember that Pastor Kurt talked about the 300 prophecies in the Old Testament that point to Jesus. He also mentioned that different scholars believe that there's over 450 verses that reference a coming Messiah. But what exactly does Messiah mean? Well, in the New Testament, Messiah is actually translated Christos, which is where we get Jesus Christ. But in the Old Testament, it is Messiah. So Messiah was used a few different ways. It usually meant anointed one. And these were people that were the kings or priests or set apart for a specific reason. So today we're going to talk more about that. So the first time we see a promise of a coming king, deliverer, priest is actually in Genesis 3, right after the fall. And it says in 3:14 through 15, "And I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. Her offspring will attack your head, and you will attack her offspring's heel." So this is sometimes called the proto-evangelium, meaning the first gospel, the first time that we know that there's going to be a savior. Then we hear about this promise through Abraham in Genesis 12:3, and it says, "I will bless those who bless you, but the one who treats you lightly I must curse, and all the families of the earth will bless one another by your name." So where is that blessing coming from? Well, it's coming from the Messiah. Next, we see the promises through Judah. Now, Judah is one of the tribes of Israel, and in Genesis 49, 8 through 12, there's a few different promises. There will be victory like a lion. The tribe of Judah will be the tribe that all of Israel's royal leaders come from, including Jesus eventually, and all the nations will obey this descendant that is promised to come. The king will reign and bring restoration like the garden and its abundance that we saw in Genesis. We also see the use of Messiah in Leviticus around the high priest. So the high priest was anointed to perform the duties of being a mediator between the people and God. And so he was a Messiah. We also see promises to David. He was an anointed king, anointed by Samuel, and then he was promised to build a temple, bring justice to the nations, and all the nations would be blessed through him, as seen in Psalm 72. He was going to establish God's eternal kingdom over all the nations, as seen in Psalm 72. And then finally, we get a picture of the Messiah in Isaiah. He would bring peace, bring justice and full restoration to God's world, bring from death, he would come back from death to offer forgiveness, healing, and new life to others. You may have heard about the suffering servant in Isaiah, and this is mostly in Isaiah 53, but it gives a clear picture of what Jesus would do to save the world. Then he would also offer a new creation, as seen in Isaiah 65. And then the last thing is dust will be the serpent's food in Isaiah 65. And this is alluding back to Genesis 3 when we first learned about the good news and the Messiah that would crush the snake. So, throughout the Old Testament, there's this motif of the Messiah, an anointed one, a deliverer, a mediator, a king, and a priest that would be coming. So, that is kind of what the Israelites were looking for, a high priest, someone that would be the mediator, and a king that would ultimately lead the people into freedom, be able to protect and deliver, and is the chosen one. So then we know in the New Testament, Jesus comes. So he overcomes the snake in the wilderness. This is during the time of temptation before he starts his public ministry. He comes and announces God's kingdom. He delivers and heals as a challenge to the snake's power, and he starts setting people free. So the sick were healed, the dead were raised, and so now we, as followers of Jesus, who is the anointed one, bring the life of heaven to the world around us. This means helping to set people free, not necessarily from all of the physical barriers that have been in place, but all of the spiritual ones. And so there's a lot more in this theme of the Messiah and what they were looking for. But I hope this gives you a starting point to go back and look at the Old Testament through the lens of a Messiah and be able to see how Jesus not only fulfilled all the prophecies, but also brought all of the promises that they were looking for. So that concludes today's Mining for More, and hopefully we'll see you here again next week.